How's it going, everyone? Today I thought I would share with you 5 tips on how to get stronger quickly in Raid Shadow Legends. So with that being said, let's get into it. And I'll say this video is not just going to be for newer players. The first tip is, but the next 4 tips are going to be both for newer players and also more intermediate players. Let's get into tip number 1. Now, this is super important, and I'm going to explain all the reasons why this is important. And that is going to be to focus on a strong campaign farmer first. Now, when I say focus on a strong campaign farmer first, that means making sure that that is your first character that is going to be level 60, working on the gear, and just overall working on the resources that it's going to take to build that character. Now, the reason why this is going to be important is because the campaign is going to be the key to progress your account afterwards. So you are going to use the campaign to farm very, very important resources in Raid Shadow Legends. Those resources are going to be experience in order to not only level up champions, but also to level up the food that you're going to need to rank up champions. And then whatever champions you're ranking up, you'll be using those for all sorts of other aspects of the game, including the arena, clan boss, dungeons, all that sort of stuff. But also, it's going to be a very, very good source in order to get silver, which you're going to need, again, for a whole bunch of stuff in Raid Shadow Legends, including upgrading artifacts, which is going to be one of the best ways to make your champions and your overall account much, much stronger. Something else to note is if you are a newer player to Raid Shadow Legends, you want to focus on trying to get to Brutal as quickly as you can. That should be one of your first goals. Not only are you going to get all the really, really awesome one-time rewards for getting campaign stars, but in terms of efficiency, when you do end up getting to Brutal, not only are the stages going to be quicker in terms of how much experience and silver per hour that you're getting, because now you're doing runs that take 8 energy instead of runs that take 6 or 4 energy. So if you think about it, you have to do 2 normal runs, 4 energy twice for 8 energy, to be the equivalent of 1 brutal run at 8 energy. But the efficiency in terms of how much experience per energy and how much silver per energy is also going to be higher as well. So if you spend the same amount of resources farming normal or hard, it's going to be less efficient than farming brutal. So that should be one of your goals, and one of your first goals as a newer player is to try to get to farming the brutal stages, and you're mostly going to be farming stage 3 and stage 6. Once you get to that point, then you'll be able to use the campaign to start working on the progress of all your other goals in Raid Shadow Legends. So that is tip number 1. Now, going alongside that, moving into tip number 2, this is going to be another really important one, and probably the biggest, if not one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making in Raid Shadow Legends, and this is just everywhere. I see this all over the different social medias. I see people talking about it in the chat. I've seen it in the Discord server, and that is going to be focus your efforts on one champion at a time, especially at the start of the game. Now, this is a mistake that I personally ended up making, and this slowed my progress in Raid Shadow Legends tremendously. This is something that is going to make your account a lot stronger, a lot quicker if you do this, especially towards the start of the game. Now, you might think it's the exact opposite, because it's a lot easier to level up, let's just say, 5 or 6 champions to level 50 and rank 5 stars than it is to take the same amount of resources and level it up just 1 champion to level 60, which is going to be rank 6. Even though it seems the opposite, you really want to focus your efforts on getting your first 60, your first 6 star, and this is also going to apply even past your first champion later on in the game. You're also going to want to try to focus your efforts primarily on 1 champion at a time. I know it's very tempting to make a whole bunch of different level 50s, but trust me, you are going to want to get your first level 60. You're going to want it to be a campaign farmer, and then you will be able to achieve your other goals. And doing it in this order, in this way, is going to make your account stronger, and it's going to improve your progress quite a bit quicker. Moving into tip number 3, which is also going to be important, going alongside tip number 2, and that is going to be to try to have some or most of the gear for a champion before you are ready to build them. Now, when I say build them, this is going to move into tip number 4 and tip number 5 a bit more, but building is not just going to be leveling up your champion. It's going to be getting the gear for them, of course, but it's also going to be working on the masteries, planning them out, possibly toming your champion. Some champions are going to have different tome strategies, and you're going to want to use a different amount of tomes, or some champions you don't even want to use tomes because it'll actually make them weaker. I know that sounds a bit strange, but that is a thing. Certain skills you don't actually want to lower the cooldown on. So you're going to want to have some of the resources ready for champions before you start to build them. That is because once you actually start building your champions, that is when you are using limited resources. And even things like energy, that's a limited resource. Of course, you can end up using gems and energy refills, but generally speaking, energy is something that you only get a certain amount of each day. And if you end up building a champion up to level 60 and you don't even have gear for it, then you've used all those resources, and now you're going to have to wait for time, or you're going to have to spend money in order to regenerate those resources, and you're going to have a champion that isn't ready to use. Not only that, but this is going to be something that also makes your gameplay experience a lot more enjoyable. And I'll tell you guys an experience that I had and a mistake that I made. I did this with Coldheart. When I first leveled up my Coldheart, I did everything for it before I actually had the gear planned out, and I equipped a whole bunch of not so great gear on it, and then I went and I played and I went through a bunch of dungeons and quests, and I did the clan boss, and I thought to myself, well, this really isn't that great of a champion. I don't know why everybody is saying Coldheart is so great, because the Coldheart that I was using was really weak at the time. Not only later on did I have to end up spending silver, another limited resource, to remove that gear, but it kind of made me feel like that champion wasn't actually as good as it was. So take some time to kind of plan out the gear, kind of see what stats are going to be good for the champions that you're building, and if you have it planned out and ready before you actually start to build it, not only is it going to make your account stronger, but I think you'll realize that you'll have a more enjoyable experience realizing how powerful that champion is right off the bat before thinking that it's weak or not really that great, because that's something that I see a lot of people do. I see a lot of people say, hey, this champion really doesn't seem that good. This champion seems like it's not doing any damage. I can't do anything with this champion. It's not able to even farm campaign. And a lot of the time that is because people don't either have the right gear equipped, they don't have the right stats for that champion, or the gear that they are using is just not really properly tuned. So that's going to significantly improve your overall gameplay experience. Now we're moving on to tip number 4, and this is a very, very important one. This is going to, if you end up doing this improperly, it is going to tremendously slow down the overall progress of your account, and it's something that you're not going to be able to recover unless you end up waiting a while or you end up spending real money to fix. That is going to be use the most limited resource to build champions last. Now the biggest thing that ends up coming to mind is going to be tomes. Now, I talked about this, I think, just a few minutes ago, and I've also talked about this in a few of my other videos. I think I actually have an entire video specifically talking about tomes in general, but tomes are a very limited resource. It seems like I have a whole bunch of them, but these are pretty much all the tomes that I've gotten from playing the game for the last 6 months or so. They're a very limited resource, and once you end up using them on a champion, they are going to be permanently dedicated towards that champion. So you can't end up taking them off, you can't end up refunding them, and not only that, but there are certain champions that you actually don't want to use tomes on. So make sure that the most limited resources, things like tomes, you want to actually save them for the last step, so that if you change your mind, or if you don't want to use that champion, or you get another champion, something that you want to replace that champion with later on, you won't have wasted those tomes, and you'll be able to work on that. So tomes is a big example, but another one is masteries. So same thing with masteries. Even though it doesn't seem like it's a limited resource, it does cost a lot of energy to farm out the masteries for a champion. And I don't remember exactly off the top of my head how much it is, but it's something like 2,000, 3,000 energy or so. That's a limited resource. And once you actually end up doing the masteries for a champion, you get one reset for free. This is a huge mistake that I ended up making. In fact, there's still a lot of champions that I have that do not have the correct masteries. Once you end up using those masteries and placing them, you only get one reset for free, and then after that, it ends up costing gems. So again, that's another resource. If you have to do this reset, that's going to overall slow your account progress and make your account weaker. So make sure you have this stuff planned out a little bit, and the more limited resources that you have to dedicate towards a champion, I would say you want to do those things later on. Things like equipping gear, also not quite as limited, but if you have to change the gear later on, you either have to pay a removal fee of silver if you want to unequip the gear, or you have to actually destroy the gear that you have on it. So same thing, playing things out a little bit and use those limited resources last. So that is going to be tip number 4. Now, tip number 5 is probably the most important one, and I didn't mention it until the end because it's going to apply to everything that I said. And it, again, is going to be one of the things that I see a lot of people make tons and tons of mistakes on. Now, this one might seem a little bit strange, but you'll kind of understand why this is important and why, if you don't follow this tip, it's going to slow your account progress down quite a bit. And that is to work with the champions that you get rather than waiting to get specific champions. This is huge. Now, Raid Shadow Legends is, you never really know what the game is going to give you when it comes to the champions that you get. Rates are low. Yes, there are double rate events. We do get a bunch of stuff for free. You do get a bunch of goodies, but the amount of champions that there are in the game and the chances to get certain epics and especially certain legendaries are so low that even if you spend money and you buy a bunch of shards, you spend a lot of money on the game, there's still never going to be that guarantee that you get the champion that you are looking for. Now, this is especially true for free-to-play because you're even more limited on the resources, but even if you are a pay-to-play player, and even if you are a whale and you spend a ton of money on this game, there's still no guarantee that you are going to end up getting the champions that you want. And that's one of the strategies that Plarium and the game actually has in order to get you to spend more money. So once you kind of accept this 5th tip, and you try to work with the champions that you get rather than wanting to get specific champions and waiting in order to gear those up and not really progressing your account until you get those champions. If you kind of let go of that idea, not only is it possibly going to end up saving you some money, but it's also going to tremendously improve the overall progress and strength of your account. So try to work with the champions that you get. I think you'll realize that there are a lot of really, really good epics, and there's a lot of stuff that you have that's probably a lot better than you think it is. So go take a look at one of the tier lists. There's a million different ones. I don't have one myself, not yet anyway, but I'll link a couple of them in the description, and just take a look at the champions that you have. You do not need to spend a lot of money on the game in order to get decent champions. If you play the game, if you just use the free rewards that the game ends up giving you and you take advantage of all the resources that you have, you will over time build up usable champions. There's plenty of good rare champions that you do not have to spend money on that you will end up getting that are very, very good. Even some of the best champions in the game are rare champions. So don't wait to get something specific. The example, you could say, man, I really want to get a Bad Elkazar. I really want to get a Sir Nicholas. I really want to get this champion. I'm going to save my best gear until I get that champion. This is a kind of mindset that you do not want to have with Raid Shadow Legends. You want to work with the champions that you have and not end up wasting potential and wasting good gear on your account, waiting for something that you don't know that you might not get. So that's probably the most important tip. I wanted to leave it to the end, talk about it for a minute. And even if you just ignore tips 1 through 4 and you follow tip number 5, that alone is going to help you get a lot stronger in Raid Shadow Legends a lot quicker. So hopefully you guys are able to use these 5 tips to help progress your account and get stronger quicker in Raid Shadow Legends. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did enjoy this video and you want to see more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel and of course leaving a like as well. Thank you very much to all of you guys who have been liking the videos and subscribing. I really do appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, or anything that you want to say, feel free to let me know. I usually check the comments several times a day. And with that all being said, thanks again, everyone. Have a fantastic day. And until next time, this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.